So we are recording the call or the session, and it's going to form part of the materials in my online community, which we're going to be talking about a bit more on LinkedIn and in various places over the coming months. So if anybody is watching back on the videos, hopefully you're enjoying this. For those of us that are here in the room, welcome to something that I've been talking about for quite a long time, which is this idea of simplifying project documents. And one of these things that comes up over and over again when I speak to project managers is, there's too much, there's too many documents and too much going on. And I do think sometimes we overcomplicate things. So what we're going to talk about today, we've got about half an hour to have the session. Maybe we might go over a little bit if there's Q&A, but we'll see how that goes. But I want to talk about the documents that are out there and maybe simplifying them down a bit. Just for those of you that don't know me, I think probably most people do. My name's James. I was a project manager for most of my early career, and then I was a chief information officer at a big company. And those of you that have read the book will know my story, my background, and why probably I care so much about helping people to achieve what I call low stress success, and improve things in their projects. So this is the kind of stuff I do. We do lots of training courses. I think I'm doing some facilitated sessions. This is a CIO conference that I do quite regularly and kind of moderate those kind of things, speaking with senior people. So do lots and lots of that. Big clients, all over, mostly Ireland, but I do travel to various other places as well. And the idea is really to come in and deliver a bit of confidence and a bit of impact in how you're managing your projects, and help people to really figure out what they're trying to achieve. And where I like to start is this idea of a toolbox of skills and ideas and approaches that we're all trying to build. We've all got different contexts. We've all got different things going on, and none of us are working in the same environment. Even if we're working in the same company or organization, the environment and the stakeholders are always different, and the projects are always different. So what I like to encourage people to do is to build a toolbox of ideas, and they can come from all kinds of different places. I like stuff that comes from, project management, absolutely, but also from places like agile, like design thinking, facilitation techniques, psychology, and so many more, always reading books and building extra things. And every time you come across a new good idea, try and use it, and then it becomes part of your toolbox. And hopefully we'll give you some of those extra tools in your toolbox today. So just a bit of a heads up for people. One of the things I like to do on the call is people will have heard me talking about Hippo and silent writing and a little technique for facilitating sessions. So we're going to do that today. I will ask everybody to, as we're going through, think of a question to ask. And when you think of it, just type it in the chat. You don't actually have to hit send. And I'll give you a bit of time later on to hit send on the questions. And then we'll use those to have a bit more of a discussion, either if we have time inside this session, or what we might do is then do further sessions and things in the future. So let's get into it. One of the biggest things that broke me back in 2016 was what I call over-the-top PMO. This idea, there's a lot of organizations that feel like they can fix projects by just applying more PMO to the project. Let's have more documents. Let's have more people chasing people. Let's keep adding to the structure and the processes around projects, because a lot of people think that that's going to help them. And what I see over and over again is it does help in some contexts and in some situations, but it can also go far too far. And what you can end up with is what a friend of mine calls apparatchik project managers, who are just running around filling in documents because that's what they have to do to get things signed off in the organization and get things to make progress. And the trouble with that is that you're not necessarily taking ownership of the outcome of the project. You're just really managing the outputs of the project, which is not necessarily a good way to actually deliver value for your organization. So what I did recently enough is I was kind of thinking about this as a problem over the summer, and I got ChatGPT to go and do all the research and figure out from PMP and also Prince 2. I did Prince 2 as well, but this is the PMP one. Instead of rereading this book, and those of you that have done these kind of things will be very familiar with these kind of books. Instead of rereading those, I just got ChatGPT to do a summary of all the documents. And it came up with, I think, 37 documents that PMP recommends we do on all of our projects. And for me, looking through those things and thinking about them in the context of the lenses of project management that I talk about and how we actually use them, so many of those documents can be replaced by quite simple, either one of 3 documents that I'm going to talk about today, or some meetings and setups around the project, the governance, the engagement with the team that are going to be useful. So I actually went through and did this piece of analysis myself against the 3 documents I'm going to talk about, which are a prioritized list, a RAID log, and a steering and status pack. Those 3 documents, I think, can cover a huge amount of what you achieve, and also the sort of softer things, so the meetings that you run and how you engage with your stakeholders. And I kind of tied them all against each one of these. And when I came out of it, this isn't true for all situations, right? Sometimes you do need a stakeholder register. Sometimes you do need a quality management plan. But for most situations, I think we can stand back and take a breath and simplify things down. So I would argue that the skill of the project manager is in deciding what documentation and governance and structure we need to put in place, and then making sure that that gets signed off and agreed within the organization so that we're still successful. And everybody, audit can come and check on everything that we need, and all the things that need to be signed off and everything are done. What I want to avoid is this idea of apparatchik, or some people call it cover your ass project management, right? Well, I did the project, right? There was a plan. We said we had a plan, and then the plan didn't follow, but at least we had one. And I'm like, well, okay, but that didn't really give us a good outcome. So for me, I don't think we should be thinking about covering our ass in terms of project management. I think we should be thinking about outcomes. And for me, as a senior person in an organization, that's where I want to be looking, because the overhead of some of these documents, when I did the ChatGPT research, I asked it how much effort it would take to do all these documents for just a sort of smallish project, 6 months, 5 people. That was the sort of scale of the project that I was talking about. And it came up with an estimate of 171 hours of document writing. That's just the writing, not any of the thinking that goes, or the kind of the planning and everything that goes behind it. And 3 hours a week of updating all the documents, right? If you're a project manager and that's your job, it's kind of disheartening to be doing all this stuff. So is there a way of simplifying things down? Well, for me, if I could just have one document or one thing on a project, and that was the only thing, if my hands were tied behind my back and I wasn't allowed to do any more than that, it would be a prioritized list. Right. I would go and do, those of you that will have heard me talk about the SAVE technique, that facilitation technique for going and getting ideas and getting input from your team, and turn that into a prioritized list. And even then, right, there's different versions of this. So the baby steps version, and if those of you that are familiar with kind of agile might have heard of Kanban as a project management technique. It's the simplest one. All you do is list things we're going to do, things we're doing, things we've done, and the goal is to optimize the work in progress, have the right amount of work that we're working on. And if you do that with a prioritized list, actually it works really, really well. So the baby steps version for any project is just list all of the things that need to be done in an order from either most important, most valuable, and most valuable at the top, or if you need to do it in timeline order, that's okay as well, right? So just having a list, now we're in a place where we at least have some kind of project document. I think we can do a bit better than that, though, with this template, right? Because we need to know how long things are going to take on a project. Whether we're doing agile or waterfall or whatever approach we're taking, it's useful to know when things are going to happen. So I like to do estimating off the back of it. And people might have heard me talking about planning poker and how to estimate things. We're not going to get into that now, but I believe we can estimate things. And I believe if we ask the people who are going to do them to estimate the things, instead of just making it up in some back room somewhere with a solution architect or an expert, then we tend to get better estimates. And if we do that, we can show the effort that's available in the team. So in this case, we've got 30 days of effort. And that all adds up in the next period. Let's say it's a 2 week period, and that all adds up to these things that we think we can get done, and therefore we're going to not do these things, right? In this next period, we'll do them at some point, and we'll talk about making decisions about them at some point. And then if we wouldn't really want to go on top of that, I would ask people for a business value for each of the things that we're doing, right? This is a brilliant way of limiting the scope of your project, because people can just throw things in if they're not asked for like the why of what we're doing. And bringing that, and again, we won't go into it on this webinar, but it's something that I do cover in the training, is how to articulate the value of those things and have better conversations with stakeholders about what should and what shouldn't be included. So if I was just doing one document, that will be it. And I've actually got templates for these, which I'll show you in a little while. And for those of you that want them, if you message me on LinkedIn, I can send you on the templates for these ones. So the second document, if I was doing two on a project, would be a status or steering pack, right? Some kind of way of telling the status. Now, actually, with one of my clients that I'm working with at the moment, we are just using this as the status pack. So it's just as simple as that, right? And then you put a red, amber, green against it, and you can talk through what's happening, right? So this is really for if your boss really needs to see a status and wants to tell the story. So for me there, something like this, right, which works at different levels of governance is really important, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about different levels of governance in a little while, but I like this model of what we did in the last period. So if it's a daily stand-up, that's yesterday. What we're doing, if it's a status meeting, that's probably this week, and if it's a steering meeting, that's probably last month. What we'll do in the next period, so what we're going to do tomorrow or next week or next month, depending on, again, the level that we're using this pack. What we need help with, this is where governance should be spending its time. How can we help the project team? Decisions required. And then the biggest things that you need to know about that could go wrong, right? Really simple. And too many people use governance for just doing updates. They spend a lot of time on this, what we just did, and a bit of time on what we're going to do. And then they never get to the conversation of where we need help. And that's what governance is for. It's for where we need help. So I would be spending 5 minutes. If I had an hour, I'd be spending 5 minutes on those ones, and then spending a lot more time on the decisions required, what we need help with, and things that could go wrong. And then if you want to, you can also put a red, amber, green, right? So red is we need you to make a decision. Amber, which might mean we replan the project or something's going wrong or whatever, but it's decisions that we're driving. Amber is we need some help, but we're still okay on the plan. And green is we've got this, we're under control. One of the things that I see a lot of people talking about is this idea of watermelon projects. They're green on the outside and red on the inside, right? People are pretending that projects are green when they're not. And I would thoroughly recommend against that, right? Because your project is red, what you're doing is asking for a decision. Now you need to provide options, option A, option B, option C. Actually, quick hack, if you're giving people options A, B, and C, include a D, which is no decision, right? What actually happens if there's no decision? And then they kind of have to make a decision on the other three. So that's just a nice little hack on it. A second slide into your pack, if you want to, you can do a project plan, something like this, which just shows over time when things are going to happen. And you can include things like schedule contingency in here, go, no-go decisions, etc. Really simple, but a useful visual for people to know what's going on. Plus, any other slides that you need, right? So if you're doing a decision and it's option A, B, C, then maybe do a slide on each of the options A, B, and C. But this is for your steering pack, probably, rather than status or stand-ups. And then if I was just doing 3 documents, the next one I'd have is a risk log. So you can include some risks in your prioritized list if you want to keep it really simple, just down to one document. You will be including them in your governance pack, but also having a place where you put your risks is really useful. And here's a superpower. So the normal way people manage risks is they do something like this, right? They do if we do not get buy-in from the teams who will be using the system, then the rollout will not deliver the benefits. That's something we're worried about. A likelihood and an impact, multiply those two together to give us a sense on the risk. And then we do some mitigation, which is a series of workshops and some training and plans and that kind of stuff, right? This is just the scope of your project. And then we have a residual risk. This is what most people do with a risk log, and it's okay. But I think there's a superpower that you can add with just a small tweak to a risk log. And that is to think about, if those things still go wrong, what are the consequences? And that for me is contingency. Most organizations do contingency incredibly badly. They do it in one of two ways. They either do this kind of industry standard contingency, which is like, we're going to add 20% because, or we're going to add 2 months because that's, what we normally add. And that's really frustrating for senior stakeholders because they're like, why do you need 20%? And you get this kind of really soft answer from someone. Well, it's industry standard. That's what we normally add. And they immediately go, well, you're not having that. Cut it, right? If you can't give me a good justification for it, I'm not giving you the contingency. And they're kind of right to, right? Because you haven't justified it. So then what people are forced to do is this thing, right? Which is that they take an estimate of how long something's going to take. But because they know stuff could go wrong, they don't give an honest estimate. So they hide a little bit of extra contingency on top of it. So the developer in this case might say something's going to take 2 days, but I'm not going to tell anybody it's going to take 2 days because, stuff might go wrong. So I'm going to say 3 days. And then the team lead gets hold of that and says, okay, the developer reckons 3 days, but I know stuff might go wrong. So I'm going to say 5 days and let's give it a week and we'll probably be okay. And then the project manager gets hold of that and goes, okay, so the team reckon 5 days. I thought this was quite a simple thing, but okay, they reckon 5 days. But I've been around the block a few times. I'm an experienced project manager. Stuff might go wrong. So I'm going to say, actually, let's give it 2 weeks. And all of a sudden, what the stakeholder sees is this enormous estimate of 2 weeks against what they think is a really straightforward and simple task. And all of a sudden, your team look really inefficient and weak, and they're not good at their jobs. And that frustrates people. So for me, one of the things that we can do to solve this problem is give our team a place to put the things that might go wrong, which is our risk log. But I'm talking about a risk log with teeth, right? And that has a contingency against the risks. So if this thing goes wrong, it's going to cost us this amount extra money or this amount of extra time. And you start to show your steering committee or your governance structure the cost of the things that could go wrong. And all of a sudden they're incentivized to come back and help the project team make sure that those things don't go wrong. And that's where your status report or your updates can be really much more powerful. So by showing the consequences of things going wrong, you're bringing those stakeholders on a journey with you. And instead of them putting all the pressure on you to deliver something, it becomes us against the problem. They want to roll their sleeves up and help because they don't want to spend the contingency. They don't want to give you an extra 2 months. They don't want to give you an extra 20,000 or 95,000 euros. They want the thing to be delivered on time, under budget, all the good things. And you've shown them how they can help you do that by asking them to pick up the phone or make sure that people turn up to workshops or whatever the things are that you need from your steering committee. And that's what I mean about making steering count or making governance count. They shouldn't just be looking at updates. They should be rolling their sleeves up and helping you because they're the senior people in the organization and they can do things that perhaps you can't. So if you're going to take all those big project documents and simplify them down to just one thing, it would be a prioritized list. If you're doing 2, I'd do a status or steering pack as well. And if you're doing 3, then I would do a RAID log. And you can include assumptions, issues, and dependencies, but risks is the big one and what could go wrong. So let's talk about how we wrap that up with a few useful meetings that can help us to actually be successful on a project, because stakeholders need to be engaged in different ways. Sometimes you need to go for a coffee, sometimes you need to do a big presentation, sometimes you need to actually share the documentation or the lists and things like that. Sometimes pick up the phone, and sometimes you do get to stand in front of a room full of people, which is where I love being, and waving your arms about and telling a story about what the project is trying to achieve. But there are really 3 kind of simple ways of engaging with teams that are going to support these documents. So the first one is workshops. Getting ideas and input from people into your plan or your risks or your estimates or whatever is really important. So it might be a planning poker workshop. It might be something like an idea or a task generation workshop. And for that, I recommend the SAVE technique: silent writing, affinity clustering, vote, and then execute. And again, we won't go into the details of exactly how to run that today, but it's something I talk about a lot because it's such a powerful way of running a meeting. And then you talk about engagement. So something like going for coffees with people, yes, really important. Something like picking up the phone, sitting next to someone for a day, you'll be amazed about how much you get. But if you want to be a bit more formal, something like a lean coffee once a month. And again, I talk about that in the book. I talk about that on the training course. How to run that is a brilliant way of bringing in all of those questions and ideas and thoughts that are going to be talked about in the water coolers and struggling. Maybe someone's negative about the project, you don't find out about it until they've thrown a bombshell in the steering committee. Bringing in something like lean coffee, which is a way of building an agenda and then having a really powerful meeting about it, maybe once a month with your team and or with your stakeholders, is really, really useful. And then if you think about governance, basic governance, where decisions get made, I would put it into 3 buckets. A daily governance, something like a daily stand-up, like quick touch point, 15 minutes. What did we do yesterday? What are we doing today? How can I help as the project manager? A weekly status meeting, because status drives action. If you don't have a status meeting or a status report, things will stall. So, same format. What did we do last week? What are we doing next week? What do we need help with? And then something like a monthly steering meeting with the senior people who need to make decisions. Okay, and you can tweak it up and down those cadences as you see fit. Quick one though, because some of you will be working in environments where there's loads of documentation that is needed, right? And I've been there. In fact, I was in one when it broke me. Loads and loads of documentation, and people poking me in the ear going, have you finished the document yet? Like, no, I'm busy. I'm trying to do a stakeholder thing, or trying to fix a problem for the project team. So if you find yourself in that environment, here's a little pro tip. All you do is take a list of all the documents that your organization expects, right? Write them down in a spreadsheet, and then show the cost of doing each document, right? Put a little estimate, right? This is half a day, this is 3 days for the team, whatever it is, right? Some kind of indication as to how much money or time the organization is spending on that document, and then make a recommendation. Include or don't include. So get the full list of everything, include or don't include, and here's the trick: take it to steering and get their sign off. This is the approach we're taking. And they might disagree, and you might have to go back and forth and agree on a couple of things, but you should be able to reduce your document overhead of documents that are not adding value significantly by doing this. And the great thing is, with this kind of approach, the auditors should be happy, because what auditors care about is not that you've done all the documentation. What they care about is that decisions were made by the right people at the right time. And if you can point to a minuted decision by steering, approving on which documents we're going to include for this project, that is often enough for an auditor to be happy. There it is. Okay, great. We've got the decision, right? This is something I missed for years while I was writing documents and documents and documents. And actually, it's quite a simple little hack that you can do. So deliver on the value, the things that are going to be. So there might be other documents that your organization, you might have to do a business case, you might have to do financial planning. There might be certain things that you need, but make sure that those things have value and stop wasting effort on the things that don't. Just very quickly, we're doing the training course at the Irish Management Institute on the 29th and 30th of September, if anybody wants to go along to those. We've got the new community setting up, and again, much more engaged than it was in the past. So we're just starting to get going on that. We've got some online training and useful videos and things like this that we're going to be building through. So if anybody would like to find out about those, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn. We are doing a 7-day free trial in the community at the moment. The price is €29 per month, and the annual price is just €200. And actually, we are also doing an additional 40% discount for second and third. So people, if you've got a few people in the organization who want to do it, you can get it down to about €10 per person per month. So just ping me if anybody's interested in that. And like I say, there's a free trial. And the best thing about that is your company should pay, right? Those of you that have training budgets, it's a very, very small part of a training budget for a year. So they should be able to do it. Okay, free templates. So I'm gonna ask, we've got about 4 minutes left on the actual 30-minute call. Hopefully that was useful. I'm gonna ask everybody to take 30 seconds now to write a question in the chat. And I'm going to stop talking and be silent about it. So 30 seconds, and I'm going to ask everybody as well. So everybody on the call, if you could write down a question in the chat and wait until I give you the go ahead to hit send on it. Okay, so that was about 30 seconds. So if everybody could now get your finger and hit send, and we'll have a look at some of the questions. Now, I know people are going to have to drop off, so because we only gave this half an hour, but that's okay. We'll keep going for those of you that can stay and try and answer as many of the questions as we can. If you do want the templates, message me on LinkedIn and we'll send them out probably next week. We've got the 3 that we talked about: the prioritized list, the status report, which includes both of the report itself and also the project plan template, and then a RAID log as well, or a risk log. So let's have a look. We've got some questions in the chat, so let's have a look. James, do you want to go with yours?
Sure. Do you want me to read it?
Oh, you might be on mute there. Let's see.
I can hear you, James Morano. I'm not sure, James,
okay.
if you can
I'll
hear.
read it out for you. What is the best way not to scare people away and overburden them when introducing a PM program to an agency service that doesn't currently have one? Yeah, I mean, I do think you're right. Like sometimes this idea of like we're all going to be project managers, let's go read this, right, is terrifying. And it doesn't have to be. So for me, I would start building with something simple like a save workshop and a prioritized list. And over time, you can build the rest of it as you need it in the organization. But I would bring your team together and say, right, we're going to run this project, but I need to know what the things are that need to be done in this project. Everybody sit down, silent writing, what do we need to do? And then you build that out with affinity clustering, prioritize it with voting or just another prioritization approach. And now you've got a Kanban board that you can start working. And when we talk about project management, all we're talking about is structure and transparency. That's really all the job is. You're bringing structure to what's going on, making sure that things happen and progress, and you're showing people what is going wrong or could go wrong, and all of that stuff. So start small. Ask people for their input. You can call it beta versions. That's quite a nice little hack. You say, oh, we're just going to do a beta version of this kind of status report. And then instead of saying this is the perfect status report that anybody, can't make a change on, you just say, this is what we're going to start with. If anybody has any feedback, please give it to me. And if people you bring their ideas in, because that's how you engage with people and get more buy-in. Okay, let's have a look. So, cool. Hopefully that was useful. Teresa.
Can you hear me, James?
Oh, I'm not sure we can hear
I
you.
can hear you, Teresa.
Oh, yeah.
I think it might be James's mic.
Problem at my end.
Yeah, possibly.
Okay, I'm going to read it out then. Most projects ultimately feed into program and portfolio views for senior management. In large organizations, project and program systems usually require standardized reports to provide that consolidated program or portfolio picture. How do you approach that conversation with a major corporate? Yeah, absolutely. So you're talking about the example I described at the beginning, where it can be very useful, but it can also get the run of itself, and we're filling in things for the purpose of I don't know why. So for me, I would as a discussion with corporates, and actually I've got a discussion very much like this next week with a big corporate client, and they have too much of this, and the project managers and the project teams are feeling the overwhelm of this, and still the portfolio people aren't getting the results that they need because people aren't filling in all the things that they need to be filled in. So I would prioritize the most important things that the portfolio needs to see. And for me, that's the things that we've talked about today. So, clarity over the value and the effort of each of the things that we're doing, clarity over what could go wrong, our risks, and then other things that you can add over time. But if I was in that situation and you've got that disconnect between what the portfolio team need and what the project team are having to do, I would start with one thing. What's the one thing you want PMs to do? And I would build up from there if we need to, and also give the PMs a chance to poke and say, hang on a second, why am I filling this in? Right? Is there value in this thing? And if there is, why don't I know what the value is? Because I can't fill it in well if I don't know how it's going to be used down the line. So I would be kind of engaging with both ends of the spectrum there. Hopefully that's useful. Sharon.
Hi, is your mic fixed, James?
Okay, and now I'm pretty confident it's my end that's causing the problem because everybody's been talking and I can't hear what you're saying. So I tell you, read it out, and if everyone else can hear you, that's great. And then I'll just read it here.
I was just asking, is there any tips on reducing the level of documents required in tendering? 'Cause project manager would have to manage a lot of tendering processes.
Just send you over the
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So this question about public procurement, and this is a challenge in my world. Actually, I want to do lots more with public sector organisations, and the procurement process often gets in the way of what people want to achieve. Again, I think actually procurement is a brilliant example that ties into this, right? Where people are looking to prove that they've gone through a good process, to prove that they've done all the things that want to be said, and therefore there's more and more documentation and sign off and discussion and things, and that creates a lot of overhead, and in some cases actually precludes really good vendors from being able to engage with the process. Like I can't spend too many more Saturday mornings filling in like documentation. So for me, again, what you want is that transparency over decision making. So I'd be looking at each step of the procurement process and poking it and pushing back and saying, hang on a second, how is this adding value? The person who wants the thing, are they able to get the things that they need? And do we have the right governance in place? Do we have the right, we need to demonstrate certain things. But for each step, I'd be poking it. Is this thing adding value? Right? How many meetings do we have to go through? Are we able to move at pace? And one of the things that you can do actually, rather than try and eat the elephant and redo the whole of the procurement process all at once, is just look at the lowest value, highest effort thing that's causing the biggest issue and have a discussion about that first. And then next month, come into the second lowest value, highest effort thing that's causing a problem and see if you can simplify or constrain that one. And just keep picking them off at the bottom. And eventually you'll probably find a balance of where an appropriate level of governance and decision making is being made and people can still get through the procurement process that they need to. Okay. Now I've changed where I was listening to. So let's see if John, if I can hear you this time.
Oh, okay. Thanks, James. Good. Can you hear?
Yes. It was
Great.
definitely
Okay, perfect. What I'm thinking is that for some project managers asking for help, particularly if they're more junior from steering, can feel awkward because they feel embarrassed that they should know something. So is there a way that you have come across that's they can couch the question or the request in a way that makes them look a little bit less uninformed. In other words,
Yeah. So I think there's an information question and then there's a power question. There's kind of two parts to this, right? So the information question I would probably take offline, and I would be doing a chat GPT, or I'd be going for a coffee with a person who knows the thing, and I'd be having a quiet chat with them about, okay, what's the context here and how should I go about this, and take that out of the sort of formal governance process. Now, for a power question, it's slightly different, right? What you want is a documented record of, I needed this help and I asked for you to sign off on this thing by the 5th of October and you didn't, and therefore we're spending an extra 20 grand on something, right? So that's where I do like the things like the risk-based contingency that really do make a difference and give people a place to stand, because some of us are able to go and do the soft side of the negotiations and in the background, but that does take a good bit of organizational knowledge and a good bit of experience. So for those of us that are new in an organization, and I've been new in organizations even when I've been very senior in my career, you don't necessarily have that, and that's where the formal processes can help a little bit more. Good stuff. Okay, let's have a look. Tiana. Hey, Tiana.
I'm at the airport. There's a lot of noise, so if you can just please read the question out.
Okay. All right. So what techniques would you recommend for getting buy-in from people in a startup to commit to complete the necessary docs? In this situation, there's not a lot of commitment to standardizing processes with documentation, as the team consists of senior developers who are quite confident in what they're doing, but just using Jira. I would probably listen very carefully to the senior developers who believe that Jira is a pretty good tool, because they're probably right. And Jira probably does have a lot of the documentation that you need in it. So my answer would be, you probably don't need a lot of documentation. Now, if you think there is something that's missing and that there is value in it, show it to them and explain to them why it's valuable and give them a chance to push back on it and say, well, hang on a second, this isn't valuable because it's already covered here, or it's done in this way, or whatever. You don't need it, right? So the key is, you're not communicating to people, you're communicating with people, right? It's not you against me, it's you and me against the problem. How do we solve a sensible amount of documentation that gives us what we need, let's say from an audit perspective, whilst not being a big overhead on the team? Most buy-in questions, the answer is listen to people. Actually go and listen to people, because they are, particularly if it's they're experienced people, their views are probably pretty close to right. So yeah, I'd be balancing it and give them a chance to feedback. Okay. So hopefully that's useful for people. That's all the questions we had. We will record this. We will share out the link for people if you want to watch back or share it with any colleagues or friends or anybody. And like I say, those of you that, if you want the example documents, I don't know if you can see my screen there. This is one of them. I was just kind of opening them up and having a look at them before. This is my comparator that I did with different values in it. This is the example of the status report and the plan and things like that. So all of those things are available if you just want to ping me on LinkedIn, and we'll get those over to you. Thank you very much for joining. Hopefully that was useful, and happy Friday, everybody.